Okay, it is 11 o'clock, and with it being 11 o'clock, I wanted to welcome each of you to our open house, week one, for Introduction to Criminal Law, and that I will be with you for the next 6 weeks, and hoping that you will be able to learn a lot about criminal law. And I'm going to spend today a little longer. You should be aware of the fact that this is a special time that we are doing this open house, because of the fact that I have graduations, a graduation from the college this evening to attend at 5 o'clock. Normally, this particular class would be lectured on Tuesday nights at 8:30 p.m. You can notice 8:30 p.m. Central Standard. You can notice that from the announcements that I sent out. So, and then also, okay, good. You got it now. Okay, that was the important thing. Make sure that anybody who chimes in reads the audio, because the audio will reads the chat box. It tells you got to have the audio on in order to be able to hear me. Otherwise, you'll just see me at this particular point. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get right into the topic, because we have a lot of material to cover. Okay, let me share my home page. Now, each of you, let me move this up a little bit. Okay. Each of you should be able to see when you open up your course home page. When you see me refer to course home page, this is the page that I'm referring to. I presume yours looks the same as mine, but on the page, you will see first at the end my instructor information, my name, Richard Wright. My phone number is listed there, 630-660-8480. That is actually my cell phone, because I'm off campus quite a bit. And matter of fact, I'm hardly ever on campus because of the fact that our program is online. And so when I tell you, if you get familiar with this home page, you will be ahead of the game in all the requirements that are necessary to complete this course. So one of the things that I say, and I'm the only professor who does this, is students can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day, except the 25th hour of the day. Now you figure that one out. When you text me, make sure that you send me the information about which class you're in and your name. Reason being is because when I get a text message on my phone, I will not know who you are. It will just show your phone number. So you want to make sure that you can do it, and it means what it says. And some of you have had me in other classes, and you know how I operate, and this is seriously how I operate. I am very student-oriented and here to help you. These courses are sometimes not very easy, but I've been teaching them a while, and with my experience that I have as a professional in the field, particularly criminal law, but you'll hear other things a little later on that I did as well. And if you looked at the student lounge welcome that I put out as well. So in the other issue is rubrics. Notice that they are highlighted. It's highlighted rubrics. They're very, very, very important for your achieving your maximum grade. And I'm going to show you how that works. APA. APA is very, very, very important. If you're not familiar with APA, we have resources, the writing guide, and then also there is one other place you can go, and I'm going to move this again. You can go to your resources tab, which I referred to in one of my announcements. Oops, what happened? How did that, what happened? I don't know what just happened here. Okay, I gotta move this. Oh, okay, I gotta hit this. Okay, let's see. Why am I? Okay, I gotta hit share. Okay, I don't know why I'm not seeing. Oh, I know why. Just make this bigger. There we go. Okay. These little buttons here. But anyway, resources tab. And then if you go to the resources tab, let me move this. Sometimes navigating this thing. There we go. The resources tab gives you library and learning resources, and you can find things like APA guide. There's an APA guide, and actually the APA guide is a source that can help you with APA. There's also a source can help you with Grammarly as well as Noodle Guide. So these are some important resources that you can use to help you, okay? So you want to continue to check those out when you need them. Okay, let's go back to the course homepage. Okay, so now coming right on down here, you want to make sure that you include a lot of critical thinking. Critical thinking is very important in all these classes. You will find out by taking a class for critical thinking, if you have not already, many of you have not at this point, that will help you with analyzing and providing not just the copying and pasting of the information that you discovered from your research, but also that you also provide the information that your thoughts, your analysis of application of the issues from your own very good brain that you have here. In case to help you, there is a link for critical thinking that can help you to find. There's a video right here. And if you click on, if you open this up and copy and paste it onto your browser, you'll be able to see more about critical thinking. So I invite you to take time to look at that. So now let me back up a little bit. And so now we get to the additional course information. And notice the stuff that I put in bold print. It talks about the importance of research. All of your written assignments require research, not just using the textbook itself as a source. And we have the Library and Learning Center that provides you with place to find information. And then you'll also see in your module the School of Justice Guide, which we're going to come to in just a few minutes. That'll help you with your research. But I remind you that if you use just the textbook in your papers, you will lose 2 points right off of the bat. And that's not indicated in the rubric, but it says to you to understand that research is required in all written assignments, and if you use the textbook solely. And I'm going to today spend a little time making sure that I go over all these details, because this video will be good to help you throughout the quarter if you forget anything. Then the next thing is all, it didn't say some, all written assignments should be in APA format. Citations in the body, according to what APA format says, and references at the end with a reference page. Now, I will say this to you and point this out to you because a lot of students miss this particular point. The point is that the citations in the body provide support for your statements that you include in your papers. They give the source of information, even if you paraphrase it. But the idea, when you got what you wrote in your paper, should be given credit as a citation. And there should be citations throughout the body of your paper. Now, I'm not saying that every sentence should be should include a citation. There are students who sometimes use one per paragraph. That may be okay. However, make sure that if you have some other sources that you use in there, that you have that information as well, so that the reader can be able to, if they want to look at more details about the source, they can go and look at it themselves. That's the citations properly laid out. And then the reference page should also include the same information on your paper that you have in citations. But you don't have to have, every time you have a citation, reference it. No, one time. So basically what the reference page is, it refers resources. Citations provide details to resources and how you use them in that particular paper. For example, you might use a person who provided some details more specific in that resource. But you can see that by looking at the APA format. If I see you having trouble with that, I'll send you to a tutor to get you some help with that. And then also reminding you that you need to have a cover sheet for all written assignments. That's part of APA, actually. And then you can use NoodleBib, which you saw in the resources tab, and some of you are probably familiar with it already, to format your cover page so that you can make sure that you have the correct information there. Excuse me a second. Okay, so now we're going to go down and remind you again, there's some other helpful resources here. Also, some information about tutoring. If you need tutor assistance, remember now, tutoring is not just for a person who is failing, but it can also help you. And we have a good staff of tutors in the School of Justice Studies. For our students, we have really good students who are actually students like you who have gone through special training and are able to help you with the assignments, not necessarily to give you answers, but to guide you in the formats and details. And many of those tutors have been students of mine. Matter of fact, several of them have been students of mine who have excelled and received A's, and I forget what the percentage of grade is that you have to have, but they are usually on the honor roll or dean's list. So these are people that can help you, and the sources are readily available, okay? Then I include some articles to help you, and that if you go ahead and you could click on these links, you can see the articles. I was giving you an example. So criminal justice writing tips, and you can take a look at that as well. So analytical tips. This helps you with your critical thinking as well. So I'm just telling you, these are resources that I'm not going to go over every one of them, but letting you know. Information literacy, you'll hear me discuss that too as one of the transferable skills that's important for you to become proficient in, and how to reference criminal justice materials, again, involving cases. Very important that when you use cases that you provide the full court case citation. You can find that kind of information in this article and also in APA as well. Annotated bibliography, you don't too much have to worry about that in this course, but it's there for you. Again, rubrics are located in each weekly assignment except the discussion posts. While I'm on that, the discussion posts are going to be due this week, and this week, only the first week, on Saturday. Your initial post and reply posts are due Saturday. Some of you have already submitted initial posts, and I will reply to some of your posts. Sometimes I'll post my own posts as well for you to look at and possibly comment about or give me a response back. But make sure they're done on time. So this, again, you'll notice that next week, when we start week 2, which we'll have a lecture next Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and that lecture will last an hour. This one is longer because of what I'm doing here in it. I'm not really doing the course assignments for the first week as much as I will be spending a lot of time dealing with that in each of the lectures. So, but your rubrics you want to make sure you pay attention to. And the discussion is very easy. If you deal with the issues in your, don't give me a short one-liner. Get your discussion post in on time so that you can maximize the points, okay, that you get. And then your live lecture schedule, which I kind of talked about it. This is the link. Those of you who are in the session already know the link. This is the same one. If you came to this classroom anytime when I'm doing a lecture, you'll see this is the same one every student gets. And somebody said once, why do every student get the same link? Well, think about it like this. When you come to the lecture or the session, you're coming to a classroom. So remember, if I'm teaching in room 101 in a physical building, and your lecture is from 10 to 12:30 or 11 to 12:30 as it is today, Central Standard Time, then if a student comes in from my next lecture, which I have at 1 o'clock, they get there early, they're going to hear a different topic. But I adjourn that class and then set it back up again for the next group. And that's how it works. That's how it works. And it makes sense when students think about it. So anyway, it gives a time here and information about your lectures, and it tells everything you need to know about your lectures, pretty much. It gives you a schedule, which today, then starting week 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. In this class, we have lectures every week. Tuesday, as I said, beginning the 12th, which is this Tuesday coming up, 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you're in a East Coast state, that's going to be 7:30 your time. Well, no, that's wrong. That's going to be 9:30 your time. So if you turn on at 8:30 your time and lecture hasn't started, that's because it's only 7:30 here. You must attend the live lecture or listen to the archive. Each week there will be a keyword given. You'll be required to provide that keyword if you don't attend the live lecture, or if you do attend the live lecture, I'll keep a record of attendance. Now, be aware of the fact that I do encourage students not to use the out that they can listen to the archive, because sometimes something comes up that you can ask a question during the lecture that you will have to call me, text me, email me, otherwise, because you can't respond to a recording. And I can respond to that or elaborate or cover something that you still might have a question about that I'm going through in terms of lecturing. I try to go in as much detail as I possibly can, but I have 130-something students, 5 classes, and so I'm pretty busy, but I'm never too busy to take time to help you. Remember that. Say, oh, I heard him say he had so many students. Yes, I do, and you're one of them. Therefore, I'm not going to shortchange you or any of you. There are times when I talk to students a long time to make sure that stuff connects. But you have to do it. You got to reach out to me. I'm willing to do it, okay? Then under where it says recordings, you're going to see that the lectures will be listed here, the link that I will send to you by email, and also posted on this course homepage. And this side of the page, you can find a lot of information to help you from the top to the bottom that I've already covered here. All right, moving right along. There's also some other things. I talked about this earlier. There's the writing process, and this is, it gives you a JPEG, this one that you can look at, but the writing process is also over here when it comes to dealing with, for the writing guide right here on this page, on the right side of the page, guides. The guides are very helpful, and this just kind of shows you the steps you can go through. Notice it says review the writing guide if you have to, and then there it is right there. There's a link right there for you. Run your papers through Grammarly, which I previously showed you. You each have a free Grammarly account if you don't already know that. Do not go through Grammarly directly. Go through the link that we have in the course, because that way you can get a free Grammarly account that allows you to check for plagiarism. You want to check the box, though, for plagiarism, so you can make sure that you get the data so that your percentage of Grammarly shouldn't be above 25%. If it is, you're going to lose some points. And then when it gets to be a certain point, I have to report it to the dean, and I will give you a chance to correct it the first time, and then after that, then it'll be out of my hands. So it's important. And we're dogmatic on Grammarly because we don't want students just copying and taking material and just providing just that alone. And we don't want students going through and not providing citations and references. And then this is the writing lab, which if you use that, you're going to need some time, at least 48 hours before your assignment is due. Remember, if you send your papers to the writing lab on Saturday, they're going to be late because of the fact that your assignments are due for that Sunday. And then, so the final draft, you make corrections and then send it to me. And then you submit it according to the process that we have here. So that's kind of like the writing process. I know it's a lot of stuff I'm giving you, but again, you can go back and look at it yourself. Now, here's one that's very important, and I already talked about the APA guide, and here it is right here. So you can click on this, and you can see the same thing I showed you under the Resources tab a little earlier, and it tells you everything you need to know, everything. Please rely on this very heavily. It gives you examples of references and in-text citations that I was talking about earlier. It tells you about the proper formatting, and then it shows you a sample paper. So refer to that so you can make sure, because you will lose points. Let me say this. All professors should be doing this, but I am one who am very dogmatic about it because I believe in trying to get the processes to the students that will benefit you in terms of student success and then prepare you for your future career as well. And so documenting the information using the proper citation method is critical, very, very, very important. All right, so that's another resource for you. I will not be going over this every week, so I'll be spending the time today, so be patient. So you saw this earlier. I sent this to you, the welcome announcement, and it tells you a little bit about me, and it tells you that I graduated from college with a political science degree and a law degree. Then also further, you learn that I enjoy reading and teaching. I especially enjoy teaching. It's all over me. It's a part of who I am. Whether I'm being the pastor of my church, I teach a lot, or my students, where I help the students to understand the content and material of sometimes a very complicated issue that comes before them, or issues, especially in criminal law. So announcements, I encourage you to check the announcements. Sometimes I post special announcements, but generally there's one announcement that I provide you each week that you should note at the beginning. Don't just look at the module, but look at the announcement. And then, of course, you're going to look at the rubrics when you do the assignment. Post an introduction to Student Lounge, which I told you about that earlier. At the end of the first week, I don't go back to the Student Lounge anymore. That's just for welcoming you and letting you know about who I am, and then you're giving a little bit about who you are. Check your course mail. Your course mail for personal communication. I saw a student post something in the Student Lounge that should have been used for course mail, and everybody can see what's posted in the Student Lounge. Only I can see what's in the course mail, because of the fact that it's between you and I, and we're communicating. Unless there's some issue that comes up later and I have to include leadership in it, then I might give them a copy of it, but they don't have access to my email information, and they should not be going and looking at those. So those are things that are between you and me. So you can provide me details on when you're sick, or if you're having a problem, let me know what it is, okay? The syllabus, we're going to go over that in a few minutes. The calendar, I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. But these are all things that you should check. General course questions, this is where you can post a question that anybody, including you guys, can answer. I already had a student to post in one of my classes a general course question, and the general course question was, what can I expect to get from this class? And I thought it was a very general question, so I just simply answered it the way I did, and that everybody could see it, to let the student know what to expect in this class. But that's pretty much what we're doing the first week anyway of class. Resources tab, I already showed you that. The report tab, that's where you find your grade book, so you can see your grades each week and you can keep up with it. And then these are some other things that I give you. Again, your guide to the School of Justice Studies is here, but you'll also see it in your written assignments. I talked about tutoring. And then you can also communicate with a librarian. Ours are on the website to help you out. We have a special librarian, Dennis Johnson, who is able to help you with your issues concerning library. And we have Bethany Marston, our Learning Center coordinator for the School of Justice Studies, and she can help you with other things as well. You have all of that right there on that guides as well. You see their pictures as well as you see their names and how to communicate with them. And then this is information telling you that I already gone over, reminding you of things, okay? Then the lessons, and then the getting started folder that helps you to look at things, and then I recommend printing out the syllabus. All right. So now let's look at our week 1 announcement so you can see what I'm talking about. Let me open that, make sure that we got everything, refresh it. Okay, so it's already refreshed. So now, this is the format that you'll pretty much see on Monday mornings, or you call it Sunday nights if you want to do it after 12, that will let you see what to expect. And it's very comprehensive, very detailed, and repetitious, but that's okay because some people look at announcements, some look at module, and some look at other things. They're like the get started, or they printed out the sheet already for each week's assignment. Weeks 1 and 2, this is referring to chapters 1 and 2, which, by the way, I will send you the PowerPoints today, later today, and each week for this. Now, I will not use these PowerPoints in lectures. These are outlines to help you for that module for that week, and it coincides with the chapters that you read and your textbook, A Brief Introduction to Criminal Law. Notice it says a brief introduction. When I was in law school, my criminal law book was so thick that I had to carry it around, and so there were times when I found myself in a situation where it was tough. But you don't have that problem anymore because now your books are digital. And then you look at the activities, types of law. What is crime? The Fourth Amendment, probable cause. There are some key terms that will help you to become familiar. You should be aware that law is term content. I mean, learning the terms and how they apply and the processes and procedures. And so we provide information to help you for practice, and you'll go over these things as well. And then there's a practice quiz. Now, the practice quiz is very, very, very important because it helps you to prepare for the quizzes that will be coming up. You don't have quizzes every week, but you will see as you go through your lectures when your quizzes are taking place. Then it talks about the open house that's taking place right now. Then now, your discussion assignment, police dogs and warrantless searches. That's what I talked about a little earlier about discussion assignments, but each week it'll tell you what the topic is. It'll tell you that the deadline is, notice that, this Saturday, and the reply post is this Saturday. Again, don't fall into the trap that initial posts are due on Saturdays for week 2, 3, 4, and 5, because they're not. I didn't say 6 yet because there's a particular reason why, but we got ways to get there. But 2, 3, and 4, and 5 will be, you'll see in the announcement, the different date. It will say initial post by 11:59 p.m. this Tuesday when you see that, okay? And then your reply post will still be Saturday, except during the final week. Again, we'll deal with that when we come to it. Your written assignment for this week, elements of criminal law, and I'm going to go over specifics in just a minute as briefly as I can, just to point out to you what to expect in weeks to come. These assignments are due Sunday night by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. As long as I'm saying it now, you'll discover that your keyword, or you should have reviewed the live lecture no later than Sunday of that week. Now, the reason why is because that's when you have to know what the word is to get your points. It is recommended that you do it as soon as you can, and I try to get these lectures out to you as soon as I can if you're not able to attend. But remember what I'm saying to you. Your key word has to be in on by that Sunday. Now, if you get it on Monday, it's going to get 4 points. If you do it on Tuesday, 3 points. And so you keep going on and on and on, then you're going to lose getting the credit altogether. So you get 5 points for each time that you provide me with the keyword, letting me know that you saw the lecture or attended. And then this tells you again about today's session that's taking place. It says it's going to be at least an hour and a half, and it will be pretty close to that because I got another one coming up after that. Now, let's start strong and finish strong. You're going to learn that my motto is adversity is the springboard to success. And you're going to learn that why at the end of this session so you can learn something about me so you'll understand why I say that. Okay? Now, let me get to my course menu. There we go. Now, the course menu, which I have on the side, shows me, you know, tells me the course session and all of that. Course home, my grades, that's not for me, that's for you. Course messages, these are tools for me. Also, it tells me about tutoring, or I can refer you to tutoring. So now, right now, I want to use this section to go to the syllabus. Let's go to the syllabus. This is the syllabus, and when you open it up, it gives you my name, my phone number, email address, and it also gives you a reminder about the things that I talked about earlier. So my students have cross-referral for information. Then it tells you, of course, the course that you had to have taken before this, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And then this is the textbook that you guys should have. That textbook, you know, is available. Let me tell you something. You can go on to your phone. There's an app. I don't know about Android is what I have, but you can go to Bookshelf, and if you go to Bookshelf, and then you can see the titles. Now, I'm just holding this up for you. These are all my books that I have. Now, the one that you guys have is a brief introduction to criminal law. Let's see, I think I have that in here. Here it is. Here it is right here. So this right here, I have my full textbook on here on my phone, so I can see materials on there. So anyway, you can access that not just on your computer, but you can go to in the Play Store. I know you can get it, and you can go to the Apple Store and get it, but it's under what we call Bookshelf, and it has a little book that you see that use it. So that's another source you can get for your textbook. Okay, now I'm going to move further down. As you can, I'm not going to go over these issues. I already discussed the discussion post, so I'm going to move right on down here. Now, notice that the documentation style requirements, it says exactly what I've been saying. APA, which stands for American Psychological Association. It tells you a little bit about it. By using APA as the common style in our classes and assignments, the college seeks to streamline the documentation component of the importance of information literacy process. So it helps you with that. That's why APA is so important as well. And then for additional information, use APA style. It says refer to the library resources page on the student portal via the resources tab. I already showed you that. All right. Now, here are the requirements for this course. There are readings, discussion posts. There are practice activities, which are not graded, but they're for you. Neither are your reading assignments graded. However, they are beneficial to help you, and it makes sense. Quizzes. There's 2 graded quizzes. They're kind of like midterm and final. That's the way I think them. And they're coming, I believe, week 3 and then week 6. So the first quiz assesses the first 3 modules. So yeah, it's week 3. Then the second one is in week 6. And these are timed quizzes. These are timed quizzes. And I do recommend that you take them after you've gone through the material. So how do you prepare for the real quiz? By doing these practice things that you have each week and by following all the requirements of the course. I can already hear you. I got 3, 4 courses. I say, I understand. But the importance is to recognize that the material is not, let me say this to you. To me, it's not a lot. Only reason because I went to law school and a professional school. But it's not a lot as far as me teaching even. When I used to do this 11-week class, I said, wow. But this 5.5 class, or 6 weeks as you refer to it, is really content conscious as well as time conscious in terms of the students. You have fewer written assignments, and the staff that put together this particular course, this course development team did an excellent job of developing it. And students either like the law course or they don't, but it's a requirement you're going to get in through criminal justice. So let's talk about the grades here a little bit. Discussions, 90 points. You get 15 points for each week and represent 18%. And the way I usually grade them is I give you 8 points if your initial post is on time. If your reply post is not submitted, you can lose 7 points. And if it's late. Now, let me say this about discussion so you understand it. The discussion post, well, I'll save that for later. I'll save it for later because there's when I start talking about late assignments. Written assignments, it tells you what your points are, and it'll tell you how many points you receive for each written assignment. The optimal is to get 200 for the whole course, which represents the highest percentage of grades. So notice, yes, writing is very important. Writing is very important in college and professional school to get your advanced degrees as well. 180 points for your quizzes. There are 2 quizzes, so it's divided in half. Week 3 and week 6, I already told you, for a percentage, the second highest percentage. So they're very important. Then your live lectures, which you have lectures, you have 6 lectures, and you get 5 points for each lecture. That's constituting the 30 points. So that equals 500 points for 100%. And that's it for the course. Now, let me talk to you about my grades to you. And I'm saying this up front. I am an AB professor. My goal is to get you to A and B, okay? My goal is not to get you to anything under that. Therefore, I make this statement at the beginning of every quarter, and any students that are in this course that had me before already know what I'm getting ready to say. Do not call me, text me, email me, or inquire how to get a C, and definitely not a D in my class. Don't ask me that. What do I need to pass? You need to pass is to satisfy the requirements of the course in a timely fashion, and or if you have extenuating circumstances, you need to let us know about it. And if they're too heavy, then sometimes students have to withdraw from the course. But the point of the matter is this, guys. You want to end up in the first 5. The lowest you want to get is B-, but I usually say the top 4. And, you know, you want to get it. Now, it's going to depend on how you follow the processes. If you do not understand the process or have a question about an assignment, reach out to me. I will readily, quickly provide a response. I guarantee you, try it and you'll see what I'm talking about. So that's being said, let's move on down. And so I'm not going to talk about my participation because you'll see those things already. Now let's talk about something that I referred to earlier. I always take time to talk about these. Transferable skills assessment. Now, in each course, in what we have determined that these transferable skills are critical, and employers are looking for students to hire in positions who are competent in these areas. The first one is communication. Therefore, be aware that you're going to have written and oral communication. In this particular course, you don't have any interviews, but you're going to be communicating primarily in written because of the fact that you're going to be submitting your written assignments. In some classes, you have projects that you have to complete, and with those projects, you're expressing oral communication by interviews and things of that nature. But communication is it's at the top of the bucket list. You'll hear that. Strong communicators. So our assignments are designed to achieve the optimal in written and oral communication. Then next is my favorite, critical thinking. I've already shared with you a little bit about that, so I'm not going to spend more time on it, but it is very important. You will hear me talking about critical thinking this whole 5.5 weeks. You will hear me talking about that and making sure that you become good critical thinkers. I'm a natural critical thinker because I went to law school and had to learn what we call the Socratic method. And so I'm a natural critical thinker. And I hear people say, well, don't try to make me into that if I don't want to go to law school. No, I've been a police officer. I had to use critical thinking. I was a paralegal. I had to use critical thinking. I was an investigator. I had to use critical thinking. And every topic that I had, a position I held, critical thinking was important, except they didn't call it that then, but that is what it is now. Digital fluency. Your books are digital. Knowing how to be able to utilize, first of all, your course content. One of the things that students have issues with is how to reply to emails in the Blackboard Learn. It's pretty easy. If you have any questions, you can reach out to one of the tutors, or you can reach out to me, and then I'll take time, bring you into a session, and show you how easy it is. It's as simple as replying to your other emails. The only difference is the emails that are in course are only for the course. If you email me outside the course, which you have my email address for that as well. It is on my welcome page, as well as my personal email is in there, richard@wrightgodisable.net, as well as my school email, which you already have, richard.wright2@rasmussen.edu. So anyway, digital fluency is very important, and you're going to be utilizing those resources. You're online in classes, and you're using the internet or digital resources. Or you have a cell phone, you got an Apple, or you got an Android, you learn how to do that. You have your iPad, your Android pads, and so forth. Diversity. Diversity and teamwork. Let's talk about diversity. You're going to come into contact with people from various backgrounds. We stress here at this university that everybody is different. Each individual is, we don't use a blanket to paint males and females based on your culture, your race, or those kind of things, your sexual preferences, any of those things. We appreciate who you are as a person, and we believe that you should be treated with dignity and respect. We believe that your thoughts are as important as any other person's thoughts. And so you want to make sure that you respect those. And so we have a diversity and inclusion committee for staff, and faculty that we participate in, because we do that and operate with that with our colleagues. But what we're preparing you for is, particularly in criminal justice, you're going to deal with people from all backgrounds, all cultures, languages, some that you don't even understand. For example, some may not speak Spanish, though I highly recommend Spanish because it's the fastest growing population in America. Spanish-speaking people from various places, whether it's the Latin America, Mexico, Puerto Rico, and other places as well. And so anyway, the bottom line is you're dealing with diverse classmates as well. So diversity, we remind you, this is a mode that, and when you take some other courses with me, we talk about diversity in terms of the profession. But be aware, in every class, we're still touching on it. I respect what you post. You respect what I post. You might not have to agree with me, and I might have to explain why I don't agree, and you might have to explain what you don't agree. I may not agree with you at the end of the day, but I'll still respect your position. That's the key. Teamwork. You're working with teams. How are you working with teams in this class? Very easily. First thought should pop into your head. Aha! Discussion posts. Exactly. Because you're replying to students' discussion posts. And I remind students all the time that they should reply to at least one student's discussion post, but I encourage multiple replies. I will sometimes reply to more than 2 students, but because of making sure that I take care of everything that's necessary to help you guys along, I try to keep it to that 2. Sometimes I have more, and sometimes I post. But anyway, teamwork. I am the coach of this team. You are the players on the team. And each of you have roles. Some of you are focusing on law enforcement. Some of you are focusing on corrections. Some of you are focusing on parole. Some of you are probation and human services, and so forth and so on. The bottom line is this, is that I'm still going to help you as the leader to point you in the right direction. And if you're a paralegal, I already told you, some of the people are shocked to hear, it wasn't called paralegal when I became that. It was called law clerk, but then it came on later. Ethics. Ethics and professional responsibility. Let me say this. Ethics is so important. It is also a part of the mode that you should be in. I have taught courses in ethics in criminal justice. I have taught courses in ethics in business. I have taught courses in ethics in medicine. But ethics is very important, especially in criminal justice. As you know, especially in law enforcement area, we have a bad mark on us because of some unethical practices that some have taken place with excessive force, or with how people are disrespected and not doing the right thing in terms of it. So we stress ethics. We start in the classroom here. There's at the bottom here, which I don't spend a lot of time, academic integrity policy that I invite you to take time to read. And as a matter of fact, now that I've said this earlier, your APA requirements prepare you for information literacy, but it also prepares you for giving credit where information that's used is taken. And that's an ethical process. And so ethics is important. I also tell students that when you take these quizzes and tests, you say you abide by the academic integrity policy. We don't have ways of following you around. But what we can tell is based on the assignments, whether or not you're operating ethically. We can tell if you're using a paper from a paper mill. We can tell if you are being creative in using your papers, your papers, you can use them. But you want to make sure, again, that if there is an ethical concern. Now, let me just say this about ethics, and then I'm going to move on, is that ethics is so serious that you as individuals know in your, you get this little feeling, either, as I say, you know right from wrong. Well, what we're really saying to you is make that a habit to use as you develop into a professional. And I say this, if you're an unethical student, you will become an unethical professional, and you will have some poor consequences further down the road. And that's all I need to say about that. Professional responsibility, follow the guideline and codes that are set out before you. You're going to learn to do that as a professional. You're going to have a code of conduct with every area you work in criminal justice. And so you want to make sure you develop that mode. And so that's part of what we're working with our written assignments. And then finally, information literacy. I kind of talked about that earlier with the APA, but it involves also being able to find credible sources, not sources that are not credible. One of the sources that we refer constantly to students, and you'll see it in your rubric, is never to use Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not a credible source, okay? And I'm not going to go into why. If you do want to know, reach out to me. Now, the attendance policy, I'm not going to spend time going over that. You can read that yourself. And so the last thing I'm going to really spend time on this is the late admission submission policy. Now, pay close attention. Assignments, I already told you what the due dates are. And it's also, if you forget, in the calendar. It's also in the announcement section as well. And it's pretty standard across the board itself. All right? Now, when each assignment is given, you'll see also when you start your assignment when the due date is. You have up to 7 days to get your assignment in. Each day you will lose 10%. Now, don't get hung up on that. Don't get comfortable with it, because each day you lose 10%. Now, here's what I was getting ready to say so you understand. Let's say your assignments are due on Sunday, and you get them in Monday, okay? Now, if you get them in Monday, you're going to go from 100 to a 90. I mean, I'm just trying to show you how you lose 10%. So you go from 100% to 90. The second day, 80. The third day, 70, which is not so good. Then by the fourth day, you're in the 60s. So you see what I'm saying. So it's not necessarily 7 days that will help you. Now, we do operate on the basis that it's very important that you do your assignments timely, especially in the 6-week course, especially, guys, especially, it is so critical because remember, week 3, I got my little calendar here on my phone here that tells me that week 3 is the 18th, or President's Day. That's halfway through the course. The course ends March 15th. So you see what I'm saying here. Now, let me say this. Instructors may waive the late penalty for a time frame in case of extenuating circumstances as determined by the faculty. In this course, I'm the one, not your dean, not your advisor, or anybody else. That is what I do. Extenuating circumstances are on a case-by-case basis. Let me say this to you at the beginning. You know, as an individual, what is extenuating and what is not, okay? Like, for example, my time management, that's not an extenuating circumstance. That's something that you're going to have to deal with. Something that hits you suddenly, it might be extenuating for that one time, but it's not going to be a continuing thing. If something happens of a major, you have your power outage, or I've had students become homeless. I've had students, all kinds of situations, illnesses and death. Those are some examples. And please, whatever you do, don't ask me if you want a note to prove that I am. If you are in the military and you have been deployed for duty, I'm going to take your word. Remember we talked about the ethical issue. That's an extenuating circumstance. I have never, ever, ever taken points away from a student who was. Now, if I find out that you're not in the military and you did it, then that's going to be reported to the dean, and you could possibly face suspension or removal from the school. Again, that gets back to the transferable skill of ethics. So I know, we're not going to have that, especially in criminal justice, okay? So the point of the matter is this, is that let me know. I need to know what's going on so that I can make adjustments for you. And if you don't let me know, I don't know. Oh, I didn't want to bother you. That's the wrong approach. Bother me. I'm here for you. Okay? If you need me and you don't reach out to me, shame on you. That's your fault. I'm not going to. So I do sometimes see, if I see a pattern, I'll reach out to a person. But it's hard for me doing that with 132 students. It's really hard. And so I place the impetus on you to at least let me know, and then we'll work on it. And I've helped everybody that could come my way. I just don't believe. I know life happens, and we're going to operate on that basis. So I can waive that. Sometimes I will not, if you 5 days late, I will not deduct 5 days late. I will deduct maybe 2 days late or 1 day late, depending upon the circumstances and the situations. There are students who will submit to me assignments 2 weeks late. You better have a good reason for that. Otherwise, I'm not going to give you points, or there'll be so few points that it'll be a failing grade anyway. I'm not going to do that because it's unfair to everybody. I'm not going to do that. It's unfair to you. We don't want you to get in that mode, because you're going to get fired from your jobs if you carry that on into that. And we're trying to help you with that. Okay, we're not your parents, even though some students have talked like their parents. It's okay. I'm 68. I'll be 69 May 3rd, and so I have grandparents and on my way to great grandparents, perhaps. So, so forgive me for that one there. So anyway, that's the late assignment policy. Oh, the last thing I do want to say, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, is the online discussions are due at the end of that module. If you make a discussion post on Monday, the week after, the discussion post should be submitted contemporaneously with the way that they say. Remember, this week it's 2 Saturdays, initial and reply. But after that, the normal rule is, and anybody can figure out why we didn't say Tuesday for initial post for this T2 quarter. The answer is, survey says if you were in Family Feud, number one answer should be because the course didn't start till Wednesday. Exactly. So that particular point. So I have heard students say to me, well, Dad, if the course starts on Wednesday, why don't they give me more time why don't they give me more time to put the written assignments in for that? No deal. They don't do that because it would throw everything off. You have enough time to get it because it's not really that heavy a thing. So anyway, that's it about late assignment. So again, that's it for the, and then there's the academic integrity policy. Take time to read it, and you will, if you have any questions about it, you can bounce them by me and or your dean. Okay. All right. So now we got a little bit more to go. I've done the syllabus. Okay. Before I get to the material itself, I want to show you the calendar. I want to go to the calendar. And there are ways that you click on calendar on yours, but I have some tools that allow me to get to course calendar. And let me open it up. And of course, I have to take out because the course calendar that I use, the tab I use, uses other classes that I teach. So I took that out. Should be only this one now. Okay, there it is. Okay, let me move you guys out of the way. Well, let me scroll it down. And you'll see it. There we go. So as you can see, we started Wednesday, which was yesterday. All right, and then you opened it up, and you can see your reading assignment. Same stuff that I have in the announcement right there as well. All right. See my mouse jumping around. There we go. And then you have your initial post and reply post due on the 9th. You see that, as I said. And then your written assignment due that Sunday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And the reason you have 2 check marks is one of these referred to the actual written assignment elements of law, and your other one refers to what I told you earlier. Your, oh, okay, I see the way they did it. It just came out that way. But actually, there's 2 because one is your live lecture is also due at the same time there as well. All right. So then, you know, next week, you start with Monday, and notice what I told you. Your lectures are going to be next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Central. So some people, a lot of people work during the day. That's why I do the lectures in the evening. Then I have people who work in the evening. So evening is usually best because there's less happening, less interruptions. But I had to do these especially early because, as I mentioned earlier, for those of you who came in later, that the graduation for this area at Rasmussen is taking place this evening. So I have to be there for that. Initial posts, you see, start at that point Tuesday, and then reply posts, and then everything else remains constant and the same. Okay. Now let's actually go to the module. Now let's click on the assignments. And it tells you what your discussion post assignment is, and it tells you what to do. I'm not going to go over this in detail, so you want to make sure you abide by that. Now, I am going to spend just a few minutes explaining to you that you need to make sure you look at your rubrics along with the details here. Notice that there are 3 scenarios. Now, you're going to, as a police officer, respond to these scenarios And you're going to not, you don't pick one, you do all three. That is the assignment itself. And it tells you what to look out for each scenario. Minimum of 3 pages, which means pretty much that each scenario should be at least 1 page. And you deal with these questions. Notice again, remember what I told you? There's your guides to justice studies again. Remember I told you you'll find it. We have resources to help you all over the place. And they deal with your weekly written assignments, online library, your APA, tutoring, everything you need to help you to be successful in this course is included each week. Now, let me go back. So then if you click on the assignment you're getting ready to do, you will see the due date. Remember I told you, there it is over there, Sunday. Then this tells you how many points you get for this assignment, and it tells you to view the rubric. This is how I grade you. $10 points for satisfying scenario 1 properly, 2, and 3. And then make sure you do it in paragraphs, make sure your spelling is correct, and all of these things. The 3-page minimum requirement. Now, it could be more than 3. You're not going to get, oh, I have to edit it down to 3. No, you don't. No, you do not. Make sure you run your papers through Grammarly, as I talked about. And then the last thing I'm going to say is this. Each of these scenarios should satisfy APA. So it's actually not 3 assignments in one, but 3 sections of 1 assignment. That's the way you should view it. And each section should have citations in the body and references at the end. Now, hold it. Time out. If you want, and I've given students this choice, if you have references, you can use the references page, 1 reference page for all 3 sections. That's what I was going to tell you. You don't have to have a reference page for each section, but you do want to have citations in the body of each section. That makes it easier, and it makes sense. I think you would agree with that. I'm not going to ask you, but I know you say, oh yeah, that's yeah. And I try to help you to follow that. So APA, and that's so it's for a total of 40 points. So, and you'll see how the points are broken down. And I have a section that I include in the grade book where I give reasons why. I usually start out by saying this, and you'll see this already, and those of you who already had me for other classes know this, is that if you complete an assignment, I let you know I appreciate the time and effort you put into it, and then I tell you, elaborate what you did well, what you could do better, what you did wrong. And then I will take away the points accordingly based upon that. Okay? And that's it. Okay? So now that's your written assignment. And then I already told you, oops, I got to go back to get to this. Click on that. So then you get down here to your live lecture. And then when you put that word through, remember it tells you too that it is due by the 10th as well. That was what I was telling you earlier. Okay. So now let's go to show you what your lesson content looks like. Each week, this is where I'll pretty much lecture. I'm not going to do it today, but you'll see that it also gives you the sections and all those that you cover, quizzes and so forth. And then it gets all the way down to the written assignment part, your discussion post, your written assignment, and then of course your live lecture. That's where you get your points. But each of these, you take time to look at these yourself. Again, starting week 2, I will go into more details and discuss these issues within these. But you take time to look at them, and when it says next, you can click on next. What is a crime? And it gives you some classifications, things to help you to understand. I will say up front that the difference between a felony and a misdemeanor is the sentence. If the sentence is less than a year, and it says it here, it is a misdemeanor. If it is more than a year, it is felony. Usually, if it's a misdemeanor, it's jail if you're going to be incarcerated. If it's a felony and you end up sentenced to prison, that's where you go there for that longer periods of time. And then they talk about difference in infractions, jail versus prison, which we're not going to go into. The Fourth Amendment probable cause, we'll be talking about that as the quarter goes on. Take time to go over this material. Again, in the normal course, I would go over it with you. There is a e-text of the Fourth Amendment, which you might want to copy and save for yourself because you're going to use it quite frequently. The Fourth Amendment is the, I would say, as a criminal lawyer, that is our guideline that we utilize so many times in cases. And then there are exceptions to obtaining a search warrant. They talk about plain view exception. They talk about consent, automobile exception, and then these are references at the bottom here. Now, I want to take a minute here because I'm really behind schedule here and I got to jump real fast here because I want to talk to you about this little story. Key terms. This is how you use this. You click on the key term and then, okay, so flashcards is the best way. Use flashcards. Then I have to run Adobe, which I will. Allow it. You might not have to do that on your computer. And so anyway, what you do is you find yourself dealing with these questions. A criminal act that is punishable by a fine and less than 1 day in jail. What's the answer? Can you type it in for me? See if you got it. What is it? What's a crime that is punishable by a fine or less than 1 day in jail, 1 year in jail? What's it called? Or what? I just told you. No answer? Yes, you didn't spell it correctly exactly, but yeah, I know because you're typing fast. But yeah, you got it. That's it. Misdemeanor. So so that's how that works. And you could do that same thing for throughout the course. All right, and that will help you. All right. So now let's go back to. Okay, let's take that out. And then let's go back to, okay, I'm going to get rid of that. Let me close that. Exit it. Okay, so now we go back down again. To keep, practice, same thing, elements of offense. You can click on that, and then it will open up until you launch that, and then practice. And it says start the activity, and then it'll says you have to pay attention to what they're asking. It says element below is not an element of armed robbery, and then you can drag it and you can to the hotspot marker to change its position. So I'm not going to do it, but anyway, one of these is not. One of these is not an element of armed robbery. It actually should jump out at you which one it is, even if you haven't studied it. You have any idea? You want to take a guess? which is not an element of armed robbery? You don't have to go start looking it up. Which one? Not sure. Okay. Let me ask a question. In order to commit an armed robbery, can you commit an armed robbery on the streets as well as in a building? So then which one is not now? Which one is not an element that you have? Nope. Remember I just asked the question? Can you commit an armed robbery on the streets or inside a building? So it says one of these is not an element. In order to find a person guilty, nope. It's to enter the dwelling. Remember I said the question I asked you was, could you commit an armed robbery on the street or in a building? So that means that you don't have to be in a dwelling. It could be on outside or in it. You got it now? See, always follow your first thought. You know that one already. I'm not going to spend time on that. Okay. That's okay. That's okay. So sometimes say you think long, you think wrong. Okay. Anyway, that's how that works. Okay, so now, again, oh man, I'm really, really tight in this situation here. I'm going to probably go about 5 over, but let's get this done. All right. So then you do the same thing for classifications of crimes. And then, above all, please, we say this. Look, read it, we say, this activity will help you prepare for your quizzes. Don't skip it. These are, let me tell you something. The statements that we put in here are not just statements just to say something. Or either as I heard somebody say, oh, I'm just sounding off, I'm talking. No, no. We're saying real stuff that will help you. Or as we say, when you're taking your medicine, and if it tells you 6 hours, you should take it every 6 hours. And you say, oh, I thought I'd take it every 3. No. If it says 6 hours, there's a reason for that. Well, there's a reason for us encouraging you. These are not things that we're going to do with you. These are things that you can do yourself. And these help you a lot, especially the practice quiz. But these other things, they help you become familiar with it. Okay? So that's it for all of that. Pop-up's blocked. I got to fix that, but that's okay. All right. So now I am going to go back in to this classroom, and we're going to talk about something really quick. First of all, number one, I told you adversity is the springboard to success. And the reason why I say adversity is the springboard to success is because I've been through a lot of adversity in my life. I've probably been through more adversity than all of you put together. It started out when I was 7 years old. My dad was murdered in front of my face in our house. And the guy that murdered him was a guy who was renting a room, and he and my dad got into it, and the fight ended up in the bedroom where I and 5 younger sisters were in the bed. It's Memorial Day of 1957. And so anyway, what happened is that he took out a knife and stabbed my dad in the head. Then he ran out of the house. Well, my dad died, and the guy didn't go to jail on a technicality. They nollied the case, nolli prosequi, which is a Latin term which means that it's not prosecuted by the prosecutor. So the charges were dropped because a witness said that my father was the aggressor. That witness, incidentally, was my mother, because she was in love with this guy. So you can figure out why the fight took place. At any rate, we continued to live in the house with this man. This man used to beat my mother after that profusely. but she would not leave him. So I'm familiar with domestic violence. I've taught a course in domestic violence. I've served on panels on domestic violence. I've worked with individuals in domestic violence shelters to help individuals, females primarily, but some males now as well. Anyway, I lived that. I went through that. And my mother, in the meantime, never married the guy. She had 2 more kids by him. I found out a very violent way that there was no Santa Claus, because this guy actually was upset with my mother one time and sat us kids down on the floor and pulled out toys from a closet and chopped them up with an axe in front of us. One of which was my toy, was a fire truck, because I had at that time 6 younger sisters, 2, one of which was his, and the other 5 were my dad's. Well, anyway, I found myself in the situation where it was pretty bad and tough to deal with. And so what happened is that this guy continued to stay with us. We moved from the area in Chicago on the west side, which became pretty bad. There were gangs in the area, though the gangs agreed not to recruit me because they knew about my dad dying, and the gangs had some morals, and the gangs had some scruples, and so the gangs themselves agreed that they would, they would not try to recruit me into their organization. So I ended up finding myself where I ended up going to the point where my mom decided to move, and we moved from one area to another. And when we moved, it was a pretty tough transition, but we moved into Gary, Indiana. And when we moved from Gary, Indiana, we moved into a very nice home. We already had a pretty nice place where we were living at first until the area changed. And so I ended up living in that house. We moved there in '62, and the guy could stop doing things to my mother, and it went okay for a little while. And so finally we came to Memorial Day of '63. And Memorial Day of '63, that was the last time I saw my mother alive. By this time, my mother had another child, so she had 7 girls, and the baby was very young, and I was the oldest, and I was 13. And this same guy killed her, leaving 7 girls and 1 boy without parents. And it was pretty devastating, as you can imagine, going through that. So I ended up being brought back to Chicago to stay with an aunt. The aunt didn't want us. They were going to split us up and send us into foster care in various places. And it was a pretty rough year, '63. It was so bad that I couldn't go to my mother's funeral. I saw her body and I just lost it, and it was devastating. Now, I went through that period where we stayed that year, '63, with that aunt, and that aunt made it clear that she didn't want us there. But another aunt came, and that aunt moved us to another house that she had built and took all 8 of us in. And when we moved there, '64, I would find out first of all, number one, that my aunt's husband was not a good guy, so I didn't get along with him. We had problems. He wanted me to take his name, and I didn't want to. Of course, you know why? Because I was so boy, you could carry the name on. Girls would probably get married. At any rate, what happened is that this guy was, we had major problems. So I would find out in '64 that the man who killed my mother and father was going to be sentenced to 10 years in the penitentiary. But someone would bring to my attention that 10 meant 5 back in those days. And it was further brought to my attention that because he would, if he did good behavior while he was in prison, he could serve 3.5 years, which is ultimately what he did. So I'm very disturbed by this time. I'm having all kinds of problems. And so what I ended up doing is asking people questions. And finally someone came to me and said, Richard, that's just the way the law operates. And they started explaining to me what the law was and how it worked. This 14-year-old kid listened carefully, and they said it's these people called lawyers or attorneys. I went to the library at school and asked the librarian for a book, which I checked out. And I read that book cover to cover in one night. And when I read that book, I learned about lawyers. The very next day, anybody I met from that point on, this is in 1964, guys, I didn't have to know you. I just introduced myself. I'm Richard Wright, and I'm going to be a lawyer. When I did that, there were people who came to me, some family members, including the aunt that we stayed with at first, who said, you don't have what it takes. I think you're shooting too high. I ended up finding myself going through a series where in school even the counselors told me, by this time I went to high school, you shouldn't do that. But see, guys, here's how I am. I didn't say to either of those individuals, I'm going to show you. I just knew what I was going to do. And I did every resource I possibly could in my life to move in that direction. I started meeting people in the neighborhood where I was living, became active at the church as a youth leader, and the church actually reached a point when I got ready to graduate from high school that they were going to get me a 4-year scholarship, but my aunt and uncle had to sign, but they refused because he said I wouldn't take his name. So I then went to junior college, and I started out as a junior college, and I moved out of my aunt's house at 19 years old when I graduated. I would have been 18, but graduation was in June. I turned 19 in May, so I was about a month old into 19 when I graduated, and I got a job, and I was staying with some friends, and I got a job in a big law firm. And I was on my way, but I was a messenger. And people laughed and they said, oh, you're a messenger. Well, in that law firm, I did the same thing. I introduced myself and told them I was going to be a lawyer. I would take their mails, pick up their lunches, and I would dress when I went to school, went to work, in a shirt and tie. Most of the guys in the mailroom didn't do that, but that's how I did. I didn't wear a suit jacket, and it impressed those individuals. In the meantime, I registered for a full load of classes at night in the junior college, where I stayed on the dean's list. And then my employers knew that, and they thought I was doing well. In the meantime, I got married right in 1970. I got married, and then in 71, my first child came. In 72, my second child. So I went through all of that. I didn't have a car. I studied on the bus, and I had to travel 1.5 hours to 2 hours to get to work, and 1.5 hours after that. My classes started half an hour after I got off of work, and I'd stay there until 10 o'clock at night. And I'd get home late at night, and I'd study a little bit, a few hours, go to bed. And I did that. And Saturdays. and I did well. So I ended up being promoted in the law firm. They saw me from a messenger, then to a file clerk, and then they needed a law librarian. I became the law librarian. While I was law librarian, I demonstrated to them that I taught myself how to do legal research using not technology, because it wasn't operating at that time, not to the level it is now. And they turned me into a what they called at that time a law clerk, which is now called a paralegal. Well, I was on my way, and by the way, the law firm was a corporate firm and represented big clients like McDonald's. I got a chance to interact with the founder of McDonald's, and he became a friend of mine as well. But there are others that, the bottom line, I was on my way, and I was still doing well in school. So I ended up reaching the stage where I left junior college and went to a 4-year institution, Roosevelt University, for my degree in political science, where I graduated from there with honors as well, with the same issues I had to deal with. And financially, there were money shortage issues that we had. And then I decided I would apply to law school, took the LSAT, which I didn't do very well in, but I knew I wanted to go to Northwestern, and I ended up applying to Northwestern. Northwestern did something very unusual because they saw how I was, invited me for an interview, and then subsequent to that admitted me into the class of 78, which started in 75. In the meantime, while I was there, I met people, including a man who became a judge, a lawyer, who told me he learned my story because his son was one of my classmates, and we ended up becoming good friends. And he said, you should become a criminal defense lawyer, and you will learn a whole lot about the system. And I took him up on it, and I was good. I became a criminal defense lawyer. I left the big law firm, by the way. I was making $50,000 a year as a lawyer in 1980. Now, that was a lot then. It's a whole lot. It would be up to over 6 figures now. But I left that to start my own because I wanted to do criminal law. They were corporate law. They did some criminal law stuff. So I ended up going on with that. So the long story of the point is that I worked my way through. I had my challenges. I had my tests and my trials. When I was in law school, I couldn't work in my first year of law school at Northwestern. My wife at that time was a teacher, but that was the first year in history of Chicago public schools they went on strike. We had no income. Here I had 2 kids, and then 2 girls, and we lost so much money that I had to study by candlelight. We ate canned, beans and stuff like that. We didn't have a stove to heat on and all of that. We had a stove, but couldn't pay the gas bill. It was tough, but I made it through. I made it through. That's what I mean about adversity. And so I continued on, and as I say, became a lawyer, did radio, came up with a show called Know Your Rights, which was a play on words, spelled W-R-I-G-H-T-S. My law office was very successful. I ended up getting in a divorce from my first wife. We went in a different direction. Then my second wife, her mother became the village president / mayor in a town, tough town in the south suburbs called Ford Heights, and I became her village attorney. And because I wanted to carry a gun, they said you can't unless you're a police officer. I became a part-time police officer. I took classes for that. I got a firearm. I used to work in drug raids. I did traffic stops. I did all of that stuff, but I never wore a uniform. I also ended up becoming an investigator because the police were very, very crooked there. In fact, the chief and other police officers went to the penitentiary at some point. The point of the matter is that I worked in all those different fields. And so I ended up becoming a minister in 1989, and then I ended up divorced from my second wife because she took off with the pastor of the church where I was a minister with. It was pretty tough challenge, but I still kept on doing what I was doing, still working with people, still helping people. And so anyway, I reached a stage where I ended up meeting a young lady that I'm married to now 25 years, coming up in July. And she and I have 4 kids now that you saw on, my profile. If you looked at the pictures, you will discover that based on everything that I've told you, that I had my challenges. So I stopped practicing law in 2000 completely. And then I ran a janitorial company for service merchandise, a company that doesn't exist now. I started doing closings for title companies. And then in 2011, someone came to me to tell me about this school I'd never heard of, Rasmussen College. And they were looking for someone to teach business law. And so I took the job. It was residential then. It wasn't online. And so I got hired as an adjunct, and I started working there. And the rest is history. I let the dean know that I was a criminal justice guy, so I ended up becoming an adjunct in criminal justice. And then they took the program and moved it online, so I had to learn that technique and processes all over again. I had to take almost seems like 2 months or 3 months of extensive training to get ready for that, and now I'm very good at it. But I went with those changes. These are challenges, adverse situations that are coming my way. And then in 2014, I applied for a position that opened up a state program coordinator for the School of Justice Studies in Illinois, and I became responsible for the criminal justice program in Illinois. And I kept that position until they changed that role, and I became, I was full-time instructor then. They added 3 more classes to my assignment, so now I teach 5 classes every quarter. And now we went from 11 weeks now to 5.5, and so I'm working with that as well. I like the 5.5s as well. So I teach that, and I teach my students that adversity is the springboard to success. Look at what happened with me. I enjoy what I do. I pastor a church now as well. I work with students heavily. Some of you guys may even know other people who have been in my classes. They will tell you how I operate. They say I am very, 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 very forthright in terms of working with students. 2 of my favorite events are academic awards and what's going to happen tonight, the graduation. And I'm proud to say that tonight the graduation is especially important to me because one of my daughters, who was my 3rd daughter that I had after I graduated from law school, will be 41 this year. She is graduating from Rasmussen with a degree. And so I'm excited, her and her husband together. So I'll be celebrating that tonight. But I'm saying all of this to say this, guys. Don't let your circumstances determine that you can't do something. When something is difficult, don't run from it. Math was my albatross. Science was tough, but I took them. I had to go through them. Some students want to know, why do we have to take those other classes? And I said, let me tell you something. Oh, wow. So you understand. You understand. And I do this purposely so my students will understand that I'm no different from you. And the difference in me and you is age, experience, and expertise. And I'm willing to share that with you guys and make sure. And I can tell you this. Your bad circumstances can either drive you or either they can promote you. I have been through storms, as you have just told me privately, which, by the way, I want to tell you that whenever you type in the chat box, try not to use privately. use everyone. You don't have to worry about it for today, but next time use everyone so that your classmates can see this as well. But it is tough, and so you follow the same mode. And so I'm going to be watching you and see how you do, and I'll remember this. I have, by the way, something I should tell you as I conclude this, because I got another session in 15 minutes. I have a photographic memory, and that photographic memory allows me to close my eyes, as you can see me now, and I can see things that happened in my past. And one of the things that I can see then is what happened in that room that day my dad was killed. I remember it like it happened yesterday. Just, you know. So let's connect as students. By the way, if you want to connect with me through Facebook, you could go to Richard Wright JD, and that's me on Facebook, and you can I'll accept a friend request. I have a lot of students, a lot of former students, and it comes in handy too, because the students are in touch with me even after they finish. And you hopefully at the end of this course you'll understand everything I'm talking about. And I have students that follow me into the next class and the next class all the way. So anyway, I want to say this to you guys. Went a little over time, but I wanted to make sure that you got the idea of the content and how it's going to work for the next 5 weeks. So any questions? You want to type in the chat box if you have any questions. Okay. All right. But the question could have been, what's the key word? Adversity. That's it. That's the word for today. So I'm not going to repeat it. That's what I want you to give me to get your points. So I'm going to say good afternoon to you. Hope to see you next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, back here when we go into the content of the material for that particular week and address any other concerns that you may have not reached out to me during the course of the week. So have a good one. Enjoy week 1, and looking forward to the next 5 weeks. I usually say good night, but it's good afternoon. Have a good one. Bye-bye. See you next week.